Today on the Gilbert.K Show, we're joined by Emmy award-winning art director Andrew Lee, the creative force behind Eternity, Upload, Shōgun, The Last of Us, Star Trek Beyond, and Tron Legacy, bringing Hollywood's most iconic worlds to life. From futuristic cities to deeply immersive storytelling environments, his work has shaped some of the biggest films and series in the industry. Let's give a big welcome to the one and only Andrew Lee.
Hey, Andrew. How are you today?
Good.
Pleasure to
Nice to meet you, Gilbert.
Nice to meet you too. Pleasure to have you on the show. Okay, so let's get on to it. Our first segment is childhood and creative beginnings. Take us back to the beginning. What were you like as a kid growing up? Were you already drawing, building models, or imagining words long before you stepped into a film set?
Oh yeah, I've always been drawing and building models and making things as a young child. I was the kid who would be like drawing caricatures of the teacher on the desks, and I remember like even when I was 9 years old, I was like methodically recording the TV themes from different movies, and I would transcribe the themes and I would memorize them. I mean, still memorize. They're all embedded into my brain even to this day. Like remember like the themes to, Twilight Zone, Superman, Incredible Hulk, Star Trek, you name it. I just took it upon myself to just memorize them because I just love like TV and movies so much. I was a TV junkie. But I never thought about going into film though, even at that age. I mean, I loved movies and I loved fantasy and those kind of things. But I never thought of it as being a career until much later.
Yeah. So as a kid, were you enrolled like in theater or art classes or?
No. I mean, we had art classes. It's just part of the curriculum, but I was never part of a theater. I think I'm Chinese. My parents would never condone, especially the first son to go into arts. I mean, like going like engineering, like accounting, doctor, lawyer, that kind. It was going into the arts. Creative arts was not really like an option. I mean, I eventually went to architecture, which I think it was like a good hybrid, where it was still professional and creative, but it wasn't like a full-on artist.
Yeah, that's great. It's amazing. So before working in film, you were an architect designing real buildings in cities like Vancouver, Seattle, Hong Kong, and London. How did architecture shape the way you approach designing environments for movies and TV?
Well, the transition was quite simple and quite seamless, I found, because when we design in architecture, we're designing real buildings for real people, and they have to stay up for a long time. And so in the process of doing architecture, you learn a lot about how things are put together. And so when we're doing film sets, the only thing that matters is what faces the camera. It's like that last layer of paint. So what's behind it can be foam, can be wood, can be whatever. It's all, it doesn't really matter because we have, like based in Vancouver, we've got wonderful craftsmen and sculptors and painters here, and they can make anything. They can make a piece of foam look like a intricate piece of wood or a stone or anything. So it doesn't matter. But having that background in architecture, it gives me the confidence to understand how things are put together. So that it helps me communicate with construction, the carpenters, because they actually build the sets. So if you don't know how things are put together, then you kind of have to just wing it, and it's frustrating for the carpenters because then they know that you're winging it, or they think you don't know what you're talking about, and they can smell a fraud from 1,000 meters away. So it's good to have that background so that I know how things are put together, and have a basic understanding of structure. So that's very helpful. And then the architecture history of it, that's also very important, because when we build things for the film industry, we are telling stories, and even though it may be based totally on fantasy, but sometimes it's based on in period pieces where it's important to understand about the classical orders, about Gothic, about classical, about all the different architectural styles that have come and gone. Because when we try to build things and create a period piece, we try to make it authentic as possible, and so having that knowledge about what for instance, like a lot of people like to see buildings built like in the 50s, like sort of like the Chrysler building and that kind of Art Deco area. So having knowledge of what that should look like, it's helpful, and having understanding about what an arts and crafts building should be look like. Like we do lots of research when we build things, so we try to keep things as authentic and real as possible, because when we create a world for the screen or for television, we try to immerse the audience to make them believe that it's real. So we try to do our best to try and make it look as authentic as possible. So having architecture background and doing good research helps.
That's amazing. That's great. So instead of one big moment, was your move from architecture into film more of a gradual shift? And what drew you away from designing real buildings into creating worlds for movies?
Well, I mean, I don't know what it was, but so for some reason, when I graduated architecture, in my year, the year preceding, there must have been something in the water, but there was like about 5 or 6 defections, people who went straight from architecture right to film, or very soon afterwards. Most of us were just on a career path to go finish architecture school, and then we go work for a firm, and then we have a career. But for some reason, in my year and in the preceding year, a lot of people went to film. So I was in contact with a lot of friends and colleagues who were already working in film, and I thought, oh wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that was a career option. Literally, I didn't. I always thought, even I thought I was going to be an architect from the age of 16 when I was in grade 10, so I'd always been on this career path of being an architect. But it wasn't until much later that I realized, oh yeah, maybe I can, actually apply these skills to do that. So when I was working for a firm in Vancouver, a colleague of mine was also working there, and then she had made the jump from architecture, and she started working for an indie film production, and then she ended up working in film. And then at the same time, she was a real film file like me, and then she was writing scripts. I was working on scripts, and we're just talking about the whole process of creating movies, but she was actually in the movie industry. So then, that was one of the, I think that was the last job that I did, where I started to apply very rigorously into the film industry. I must have sent 100 resumes to different film productions and production designers and art directors all through Vancouver, and eventually someone gave me a shot, and then I never turned back.
That's amazing. So for viewers who may not know, what exactly does an art director do on a film or TV production, and how does the role support the production designer and the overall visual look of a project?
Maybe I'll just step back a bit and tell you just a bit about the art department. So the art director works in the art department. So art department is just one of many departments that are in the film production. Like if you see the end of the credits, you see the long list of people who work in a movie. So the art department is one of the first departments to start on a production. So the art department consists of the production designer, the art director, at the very least, and then a coordinator. And then depending on the scale of the production, it can be anywhere from, like, if it's like a itty bitsy micro budget production, it could be like 2 people, like just the designer, the art director, to being in a bigger production where you could have like 20, 30 people in the art department. So the art director's role varies depending on the size of the production and the scale. So if it's a very small department, art director has to wear many, many different hats. They have to draw. They have to manage. They have to do graphics. They have to do illustrations. They do basically everything. If it's small, but typically that would be the much more of a rare case. I mean, I tend to do more medium to bigger budget productions, and in those cases, I act more as a manager. So I basically, depending on the role, if I'm like a supervising art director, then I'm sort of the main manager of the art department who works under the person designer. So I'll be responsible for organizing and hiring the crew and making sure that everyone is working towards achieving the vision of the person designer and making things to stay on budget, because we get in trouble when we go over budget, and making sure that everyone is working happily and proficiently. But when I'm an art director, then you're more focused on responsible for the sets that you're delegated to. So depending on the scale of a production, you may have a show where you may have, anywhere from like 5, 10, 20 to, over 100 sets or more.
Wow.
So depending on the scale of the production, there's only so much that an art director can manage. So a lot in bigger productions where you have many different sets, you would assign like this grouping of a set to this art director, and then they would be responsible for that, and they would work with the person designer who would come up with the look, the vision of it, and they would work with the illustrator to create the concept of it, and then the art director would work with set designers and drafts people to draw, create the drawings to build the set, and then from there we issue the drawings, and then we actually make it real. We turn those ideas from just a verbal idea or a pretty illustration into something that's tangible, and we start the process. So that happens all during prep before we start shooting it. And once we start shooting the sets, then art director is responsible for making sure that things are in place for the film crew when it comes time for them to shoot it. We open set, make sure all the different departments are all in sync, and that what's needed for the scene that's be shot that day is all in place, and then if all goes well, everyone's happy, then you've done your job. And but essentially that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, that's great. So how much time usually do you have to build? It depends on the complexity of the film or something, on how much time do you usually have. Usually you go first, right? You set up the set and all that stuff. You have like months or
typically depends on the show, but it could vary anywhere. Like if it's a smaller budget production which can't afford to build a lot of sets, they might have as short as like 4 weeks prep. But typically I want to say on average it's more like 8 to 10 weeks of prep. That means that 8 to 10 weeks before we actually camera start rolling. So that literally means that from the time you start work on day one, you have basically nothing. You maybe the designer may have some ideas about what they want, but we don't have a single drawing. We have no concepts. We have nothing. So from that time to say 8 or 10 weeks from that, we have to have a finished set that an actor can occupy, the film crews can shoot. So in that very short time, we have to design it. We have to get those designs approved. We have to draw it. We have to build it, paint it, dress it, light it, rig it, everything, all in that time. So depending on, I mean, you'd be surprised how much we can, like if you have a good crew and if there is sufficient funds, I mean, you can build a lot in 6 or 8 weeks. I don't recommend it because it's very stressful.
Yeah.
But it is achievable. It takes requires. Typically, we work Monday through Friday, but when things are really, 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 really busy, then we have to work like 6 days, and construction and painting may have to work like 7 days a week, which really sucks
Wow.
because they have no life. And then even in cases where we're like super, super compressed, you could even have 24-hour crews where we work typically like from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but you may have another crew that works from 7 p.m. till the next morning, working like 24 hours. Luckily, our director doesn't have to stay up 24 hours, but we go home and sleep. But we have crews that may have to
rotate.
You have to rotate because we're so under the gun. Like when they have a schedule, it says that we're shooting on this day, we do our very, very best to make that day possible. Because it like any delay is very expensive, because it costs, depending on the size of the crew, like $80,000-$100,000 or more per day to rent a film crew. So and then there's also all the actors are super busy people, especially the ones that are very popular. So they have certain times available, and if you're not available for those times, too bad. You don't have them. So you have to make those days available, and you have to hit those targets.
Wow, that's amazing. So film sets can be massive operations with hundreds of people. I think you already touched on that. How does the art department collaborate with directors, cinematographers, and costume designers to create one cohesive visual style?
Well, the production designer is the visionary, who is responsible for the look of the show, and depending on the I guess the creative control of the director. Director, of course, is the creative lead. Of course, it depends. There's like two different animals. There's motion pictures, and then there's TV or streaming. So or series. So in the motion picture world, the director is king. The director calls all the shots. They're the creative lead. So they would work with the production designer to come up with the look. Like if you're designing Dune, that doesn't just come from nowhere. You have to set that comes through hundreds and hundreds of hours of discussions and concepts and meetings. Whereas on TV production, there's usually a showrunner who's like the boss, and then in a series, say you're doing a series where there might be like 6 episodes, 8 episodes, or 22 episodes, back when we're doing lots of network shows. So in those kinds of situations, directors just work from episode to episode. So there would be like a rotating roster of directors, but the showrunner is a consistent creative lead. So that person ends up being the creative leader, who basically it's an impossible job, by the way. If you ever want to consider being a showrunner, it's like the hardest job in the world. You have to write, direct, manage. It's incredible. It's the reason why they get paid a lot of money. Showrunners do, right? But they but nevertheless, they, depending on how much they creatively let the production designer conceptualize, right? The production designer would work with all the other departments, meaning they would touch costumes to a certain extent, at least in terms of coloring and that sort of thing. They would definitely work with set deck, because set deck is like hand in hand with our department. That's why, like, whenever they award the Oscars, they usually award it to the production designer and the set decorator, because those two departments work hand in hand. Because our department creates, you see, the room, and then the set decorator does all the decorations to bring character and I guess life and authenticity to a set. So the set decoration department is very close, and the props department is a close second with us. And then, but in the course of prepping for a show, whether it's TV or motion pictures, as art director, we have to work with all the other departments, meaning like special effects and grips and lighting, stunts, and every department really. Any department that affects requires input to a set. So we would have to coordinate with them so that to make sure it's all in sync. So because when we build a set, for instance, like we don't actually. This is a part that is very different from architecture. Like when we build something, architecture has to stand up on its own, and there are a lot of regulations to make that happen. Whereas in a film set, we can cheat because we can have a massive cantilever out, but we can just pick it off camera with cables up to a stage ceiling, right? So the people who do the picking or hanging, those are the grip department. So the art department works with the grip department to coordinate what needs to be supported by them or hung by them. And we also need to work with lighting because without light we don't see anything. So it's important that we work with lighting to ensure that there's opportunities for lighting to light the set, and if we need to hide anything, any light sources, we work with them, and of course we work with also the camera department because when we shoot a set, it's not, even though it made appear like a small room, but if you're actually shooting it, sometimes you need to what we call wild walls. We basically pull a wall away in order for camera to be able to shoot wider shots, or also just for ease of shooting. Because when we shoot sets, we shoot in frames. Like we shoot like a master, then we shoot different angles on different coverage depending on what the scene is. So that requires walls to disappear, so that walls that are off camera to disappear. So that allows for the film crew to move in and out quickly and efficiently. Because when we're shooting it, like every second counts. So it's important to make the set as film friendly as possible. So that requires coordination, requires us to work with the departments, different departments, to make sure that the sequence that they want to shoot can happen in the set that we design, so that we accommodate for those things. So all those things need to happen in conjunction during prep in the course of designing it, and then as an art director, it's our job to basically coordinate that information. In some ways, we're kind of like the information funnel, where we basically we communicate what's needed to different departments, and then we get feedback, and then we pass on that information to people who need to know that information, who then need to act on that information to make things happen.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's amazing. So we're going to take a break, our first break, and we're going to play a game, This or That. And it's a rapid fire game for the audience to get to know you. So practical sets or CGI environments?
Practical sets.
Sci-fi worlds or historical epics?
Oh, sci-fi every time.
Big blockbuster films or intimate indie movies?
Oh, big blockbuster, please.
Designing futuristic cities or ancient civilization?
That's a toss-up. I think I still lean towards sci-fi.
Sci-fi. Film production or streaming series?
Or film production, like motion pictures.
Yeah. Sketching ideas by hand or digital concept art?
Initially sketching by hand for idea generation.
Massive soundstage builds or real location design?
Oh, soundstage builds are more fun.
Hollywood studio productions or international productions?
Hollywood, I would say, but that's really all I know. I haven't done many international productions.
And architecture projects or movie sets?
Movie sets.
And finally, designing spaceships or designing castles?
Oh, spaceships.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next segment, building cinematic worlds. So you've worked on some huge blockbuster films like Star Trek Beyond, Tron Legacy, Pacific Rim, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Which of these projects challenged you the most creatively as an art director?
Of those ones in particular, I would say Star Trek was quite challenging. It was very, just because of the whole scheduling of it. I don't know if you know like the sort of backstory of it, but this was we did that movie as part of the 50th anniversary of the first airing of Star Trek. So it was kind of done in a time when the studio had to have this movie released on that date. This was 2015, I believe, and so it had to be released that day, which means that we have to first finish it before that day. So, but when we first started it, I was prepping on it. For some reason, someone didn't show the script to the head honcho, the head of the studio. Or maybe they did, but they didn't focus on it. I don't know. But anyways, when it comes down to it, they didn't like the script, and they kind of just said, "Yeah, sorry, do over." But we couldn't stop prep because we had to make this movie. So basically, we were already in prep for about I would say 2 months, 3 months. And so then they basically fired the director, which meant that the production designer also left. And we had no script, but we knew we were going to make a Star Trek movie. So we knew there was going to be like a Star Trek Enterprise. There was going to be certain key elements that were going to be part of the Star Trek universe. So we knew those things would happen, but we didn't have a story. So so at that time, I mean, you can imagine the pressure. So we basically had no script, but we didn't want to stop. So we had to basically continue working, continue conceptualizing and drawing. And we, in the course of doing that production, we had to keep everyone thinking along. And at the time, I just remember the name of Simon Pegg. That's right. So Simon Pegg was one who played Spock. Not Spock. Sorry, he played. He did. Sorry, he did play Scott. Yeah. So he was also the lead writer. Amazingly. So basically, we hired a new director, and he had to basically come up with the concept, pitch it, get that approved, and then start writing. And then at the same time, we had to start, as concepts came in, different story outlines came in, we then had to conceptualize what that looked like with the new person designer. And so that was very challenging because we had to basically start with nothing and then work
as you
quickly,
go, basically.
As we go, yeah. So but luckily, I mean, amazingly, like Simon Pegg and Doug Jung were the writers that they managed to craft a interesting script that luckily J.J. Abrams finally approved, and we proceeded with it. Sorry, got a call coming. And so that was challenging, and that we just had to, because it was a massive budget production, so we had a lot of different sets to do, and so it was challenging in that respect, just because we had to do a lot in such a short time, and we had to meet this deadline no matter what.
That's great. So sci-fi films like Godzilla and Pacific Rim require creating worlds that feel futuristic but believable. What's the process of designing something that audiences have never seen before?
Well, it always starts with research, because even if we're doing something that's completely fantasy, it's like we're humans, and every especially nowadays when the people see so much on the internet that it's hard to, well, one, it's hard to do something very, very original because people have seen so much. But nevertheless, it's still important to do the research so that what we create still is grounded in reality. So even if it's like totally futuristic, like say, watching Dune, I mean, there's no place like that on Earth that looks like Dune. However, you can imagine that, like a tomb, like in Egyptian pharaoh, could be of that scale, or it could be imagined that a certain, if you've been inside or you've seen a science fiction movie where you know what a cockpit kind of looks like. You know that there's like a place where you sit, and a place where there's some place where you have to steer the ship. So things that like that are the basics, but what makes it real is the research, the little details that makes a set feel real. Like for instance, give you an example, like the movie from last year called The Complete Unknown. The designer on that one, Francois, I forget his last name, but I worked with him on a show a while back. But on that show, we the main set was the apartment of the main character, and the amount of detail that went into that one was incredible. If you can see it, I mean, it looks like a real place. Every single inch of that set was thought of, and so that's like that's the work of the art department, as well as it's the set decoration department, to make that all real. And the reason why it looks so real is because they did research. They did tons and tons of research to make it look as authentic as possible. And not that we're copying it, because a lot of times you use the research to apply to your current story. So even if the research is not like a direct, like if you're doing like Frankenstein, like there's, I mean, you can research what other Frankenstein movies are like, but you can't like research, what does his lab look like? Because that he never existed. It was all fictional. So but you can research what a laboratory looks like. You can research what electrical systems look like if you want to generate a huge amount of power in a laboratory setting. So those are things that you can research to ground your designs, that it looks real. So rather than just making it up from scratch and making it into a fantasy, because the problem with that is that if it looks too fantastical, then the audience can't relate to it. They don't understand what it is. So when that happens, you kind of, because the when we're telling a story on film, it's a visual language that cinema is. So we tell stories by showing the audience what it is that we're trying to make them believe it is. So, but that has to happen in a very fast way. Like a lot of times we don't have the like. There's. I mean, it would be like a very boring movie if the character has to explain the room that he. Oh, look at me! I'm inside a Art Deco room. Look at this beautiful piece of furniture that was designed, in this way. I mean, you just have to feel it. You just have to just understand that it's, look, you see this character in this setting. Oh, it's real. Of course, that's what it should be. You just accept it, and so that's why you need research, so that you can give an anchor for the audience to hang on, and then from there, once they believe in one thing, then they kind of go, oh yeah, sure, that makes sense. So even if like if you're doing like in Pretty Things, that amazing movie with like crazy amazing person design, where they even though things were very weird, like making an entire floor like a sofa, like everything was soft, but you understand, okay, I understand what a sofa is, understand that it's supposed to be soft, but now it's a floor. But so that's kind of weird, but I get that. I can understand what a sofa is supposed to be, so now I can say, okay, sure, they want this floor is soft, and now they can sit anywhere because it's all sofa. The whole floor is sofa. So, but if you make the floor like out of goo or something that's fantastical, then even though it's just as weird, but you don't understand what that is, because it's like, why would you want to sit on goo?
Yeah. That's great. So you also worked on major TV productions like The Last of Us, Shōgun, Midnight Mass, and The Good Doctor. How is designing for TV different from designing for big Hollywood feature films?
Well, nowadays you might say that they're almost the same. Like when there was a time like way back, I would say like in the 2000s and earlier, when there was quite a dichotomy between film productions and TV productions. There was like people who worked in film were seen to be like doing more high-end work, and then people working television, they were doing things that were productions that were a little bit more lower budget, and like because back then television was. This is before streaming. So when we do a TV series, you would do like 22 episodes. That was like 22 stories that you have to do per season. That's a lot of different episodes. There's a lot of prep. So then they have to work quite quickly, and you don't really have the time to really build very intricate, very detailed, very expensive, elaborate sets. But nowadays, now that we've gone to streaming and the budgets have gone quite high, so in productions like the Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, I think I was reported that the budget was like for the whole series of close to $1 billion. Incredible amount of money, right? So so in order to achieve those looks, we in the course of prepping for a TV series versus a motion picture, we still have to put in the time to make it happen. But the only main difference is time, basically. Like in a motion picture production, we typically may have like 8 or 10 weeks of prep time before we start shooting, or sometimes more, depending on the production. But in features, in series, you may have like, depending on the production, sometimes you may also have that short time. But if it's a production that requires a lot of builds, like The Last of Us, where we had, or the Shōgun, we had lots of big builds, you may have a much longer prep time because we have so much more to build and to conceptualize the design. So then the prep for those things are going to be longer initially, but once we start shooting, you may have, like, depending on the length of the episodes, you may have like 30-40 days of shoot per episode, or sometimes 60, depending on what it is. But those things are going to be coming back to back. Like it's like shooting motion pictures back to back to back to back. So it's a lot of prepping, a lot of conceptualizing, lots of hard work, lots of stress to basically make these mini movies back to back. Whereas a motion picture it's a little bit more luxurious if it has a lot of prep, because it's more linear, because we basically we prep and then we shoot the motion picture in a whole sequence. We don't have to worry about another motion picture that's going to be attached to that. Unless, of course, if it's like, it's very rare, but sometimes they like, for instance, like Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, they
Yeah.
were prepping for like 2-3 movies at the same time. So they would be someone long prep journey where they would prep and shoot and then prep again. But in most cases, it's more like you finish the movie and then you're done and then you move on. But and then you see how well it does, and then if they like it, then, or if it does well, then maybe there's a sequel or maybe not. But motion pictures tends to be a little bit more luxurious, I guess.
Yeah.
If you put it that way in terms of timing wise. But these days things are very compressed now, like in the film industry. Things like the demands from studios and are everyone has very high expectations, as they should have, which means that everyone has to work harder to produce the best quality, whether it's for the smallest screen on your TV, on your favorite streaming device, or for the motion picture. So I would say that in general the bar has been raised in general across television and motion pictures. So now these days, people who work in motion pictures, they freely would like work in a series. They go back and forth. There are some who like to stick strictly with features, but in general, there tend to be much more crossover these days, where people work back and forth between series and motion pictures.
Yeah, that's great. So one of your projects is the film Eternity. It's one of my favorite films this year, which blends emotional storytelling with a unique visual tone. What was your role as an art director on that film, and how did the art department help shape the atmosphere and word of that story?
Well, that film was a very unique little production. We had a tiny budget, but we had people with a lot of heart. Like the director, David Frey, was like the sweetest, most generous man in the world. Very collaborative, and then he worked very closely with with the DP Rory, and with our designer Sazu Myers, and so they conceptualized the show from the very beginning to be based in that sort of. They didn't want it to feel too futuristic. They didn't want it to look too fantastical. So they decided to like grounded in that world that hovered somewhere between reality and I guess like a mid-20th century vibe. And so we try to keep the afterlife world very streamlined and cohesive with the balance of colors, and the process was very collaborative, as I mentioned, but because we were on a tight budget, we had to really make the scenery count, put the resources and money in front of the camera as much as we could. So working closely with David and the creatives, and also with the amazing producers, we basically try to keep the tone in keeping with the script, because everyone just loved that script. It was like it was so well crafted. So we tried our best to keep the sets be just the backdrop, but we wanted to inform the story, of course. So there wasn't a lot of like the sets that you saw, which were much bigger in scope, were all digitally extended because we didn't have a very big budget. So so we as I said, try to put the money in front of the camera, and then we created the key sets, and then visual effects helped us extend the sets and multiply them to make them appear bigger.
Oh, wow.
But in the end, I think it is the characters and the love triangle and the tone of the movie. I think we tried to do our best to in the art department to make that facilitate that story as best we could.
Yeah, that's great. So you've been recognized by prestigious organizations like the Art Directors Guild, Leo Awards, and the Children's and Family Emmy Awards. What did those recognition mean to you personally after years of working behind the scenes?
Well, it's very nice to be recognized. I mean, to be honest with you, when I first got this award here,
Wow, yeah,
I use it as a class holder now, but I keep it in the office because I like to just remind myself that it actually happened. I actually got that award. But of course, it's nice to be recognized by peers. But to be honest with you, when I first got it, I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until later when people see they see that cool, you got the award, you got the Emmy, and because when you come right down to it, I guess not everyone gets an Emmy, and I'm one of the people who was lucky enough to work on the production. In this case, Spiderweb Chronicles, with an amazing person designer, Elena to create the world and the amazing team behind us. That all the craftspeople who worked this is one of those shows which I talked about where we worked 6-7 days a week to make it happen because we had such a short prep. But we had an amazing art department and amazing craftspeople to make this happen, to let us create those sets that lucky enough the voters decided to grant us this award, which was fantastic. And so it certainly was nice to get one. And then now that I've got one, I really do cherish it, and I really do appreciate that. I'm one of the lucky ones who has an Emmy. It's really kind of cool. So it's always nice to be recognized. But the main thing for me whenever I work on a project is the people that I work with and the team that I work with, because we all work towards trying to do our best job in creating something that looks really good for the camera and to tell us the story. So the best, I guess, perk for us is finishing a set and seeing it on camera and taking a picture for it for our portfolios, because it took a lot of work to get there, to create something from nothing, from an idea. So that is an award in itself, just finishing a set well and with a great team. But then getting an award is, of course, icing on the cake, and of course it's a great honor.
Yeah, that's amazing. So looking back at more than 2 decades in the industry, which project made you step back and think, we really created something special here?
Well, I mean, every project has its own challenges. I mean, that's one of the things that I find very, I guess, refreshing and always interesting about the film industry, because every day is different. Even if you had the same script with 2 different crews, the movie would come out differently. It's it's the people and the creatives. Every decision we make from day to day that makes it special and different. I would say that even my current show that I'm on, it's one of the more sort of interesting and creatively satisfactory shows that I worked on. I can't tell you what it is because it's a secret, but it will come out very shortly. But it's I can tell you generally that it's it's fantasy based, so we're world building, which is in itself is a very fun thing to do. Like to create something from nothing, and
Yeah.
that doesn't never existed before. Is always fun, and then to have a studio and the budget to allow us to do this, of course, is a blessing. And so yeah, I would say that this current show is
One
right
of
up there
those.
in terms of creative
Yeah.
challenges.
Okay, great. So how representation is important to the film industry?
Well, representation is important to me. I mean, obviously, a person of color, and I believe that representation is important both in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. Obviously, there have been lots of progress in recent years in front of the camera, because we do see a lot more diversity now in the way shows are cast. We're also I think this is probably one of the benefits of streaming with like Netflix, where we see like a much wider library of international productions. So people are used to seeing people from different cultures, different faces in front of the camera. But what happens behind the camera is also important, because it's the people like me who work behind the camera to create what you see in front of the camera that also influences what you see. So, but in my part, it's more the creative side or the visual side. But I would say that people who actually write and produce and direct are probably even more important in terms of bringing their diversity and their voices to storytelling. Like for instance, for me as someone who works in the design world, just because I'm Chinese doesn't mean that I'm like intrinsically able to create a Chinese movie. Like I mean, I wasn't born with the genetic material to know what a Chinese pagoda should look like. I mean, that I still have to research, but I do know, for instance, that when I walk into someone's home, I should take off my shoes. If I know about certain cultural things which are unique to my culture, and those are things which might be more important for a writer or for a director, but they still inform the design things as well too. Because if I was because of my background, I would like, I mean, it could be a pet peeve. Like one thing that I really hate is like seeing bad graphics in TV and television. Like when there should be nowadays with Google Translate and with the assortment of fonts that are available, there should be no excuse for putting up bad Chinese characters or erroneously translated Asian text, whether it's Chinese or Korean or Japanese or any other non-English language. There should be no excuse for that now, because we have so many resources to be able to get it right.
Yeah.
So, but for someone who's from that background, of course, it makes it easier if I read Chinese, then if I could see it, then I know it's wrong. So that's just one example. But having the people who like in behind the scenes who work in the whether it's in arts or in grips or in the camera or in set decoration or in costumes. I mean, what we see in front of camera should reflect what we see around us in the world. So if we live in a diverse world, if we want to reflect reality, the world that we see on the camera should be as diverse. And then the people who make the movies should also be as diverse, because people, it's, I mean, I feel blessed. I've been working in the film industry for almost 26 years now. So it's a career, and it doesn't mean and it should be open to anyone who wants to work in film production. But because it's not one of the career paths that a lot of like say Asian people are gravitate towards, it still is something that is still very viable and very lucrative and rewarding career. So if there are more people who look like me work in film, that would inspire other people who look like me or who are other persons of color to perhaps give it a shot. Maybe they might have enjoy lending their voices to the film industry, because I think by telling stories and creating more understanding, I think that's very important nowadays in this world where we lack a lot of understanding. And so anything that we can do, either in front of or behind the camera, to promote representation, diversity, I think it's a good thing.
That's great. That's great. So, Andrew, and finally, for young filmmakers, designers, or architecture students watching today who dream of working in the art department, what advice would you give them about breaking into the film industry?
Well, I'll say first of all, you have to figure out what you want to do, and like when you see the end of a movie, there's like depending on the feature, there could be a cast and crew of thousands of people. Like, it's just staggering how many people are involved in the film industry. But in my experience, I've taught in some institutions like the Vancouver Film School and Capital University. Most film students, they think that they want to be either a director or a director of photography. They even though those are only like two jobs in a production. And so if you want to work in film, you should look into what other creative avenues there are, because there are many, many different jobs for you. And so if you want to work in art department, then you should come from a design background. So it helps to be able to visualize things. It helps to be able to communicate visually. It helps to be able to draw, because you need to be able to tell what's in your head and show it on a tablet or a piece of paper to someone else, so that they understand what you're thinking is the same as what you're telling them. But there are many other jobs. Like you could be, if you're into fashion, there could be costumes, or if you're like to write, there could be, you could be a writer. If there are many different avenues, but I think the main thing is to do your research and go watch YouTube channels like Gilbert's. I watched other sources of information on YouTube and elsewhere to learn about. There's so many. There's really no excuse. There's so much information out there right now, so you can learn about what cinematographers do. You can learn about what directors do. Learn about what different crafts people do, and then find your place in that. Because there's the film industry is relatively big. I mean, like in British Columbia, I think it's reported that we have like close to $3 to $5 billion worth of I guess investment in the industry. So internationally, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's invested in the film industry, employing like tens of thousands of people. So, and not all of them are directors. So it's if you're a creative person, you like a challenge, the film industry could be for you. But of course, it's not for everyone. It's definitely not a 9-to-5 job. You don't go to the same place every day. It's not like you just clock in, clock out. It's things are changing a lot. You have to be very collaborative because you work very closely with your team, your department, and then we also with other people. But it's fun and it's enjoyable. So yeah, I would say do your research, find out what you like, what turns you on, whether it's design or it's costumes or writing or whether you're more of a builder person, like maybe you like to build things, or you're a painter or whatever. There's so many different available channels that you can funnel your creativity in the film industry. So
that's great. Thank you, Andrew. So Andrew, we're nearing the end of the show. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. Andrew Lee, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.